it's liquid. So obviously, once people have liquid and cash coming in, they say, hey, I work for a company, and the company tells me that if I'm going to start saving for the long term, I got to start doing stocks, which is essentially your company retirement account, your 401k, or so on and so forth. And see, the reason why in finance we like stocks is because we know that historically it's a good place to earn a rate of return. Now the only downside is we know that there's some risk. See, and typically what happens next is now people work at their job for 2 or 3 years, and they qualify for a mortgage, and their friends and family start talking to them and saying, hey, Wante, it's time for you to stop renting, and it's time for you to go buy a piece of real estate. And I'm like, look, man, I love real estate because if you look at the reasons why, I mean, it'll give us some tax benefits, and if you do it right over the course of the long term, it'll give you some passive income. And see, from my perspective, right, and you guys can comment or agree or disagree, this is typically where 99% of our economy stops. And I have a basic question when I'm talking to everybody about this. I'm like, hey, look, there's nothing wrong with having these 3 different types of accounts. But, Robin, I got a question for you. If the stock market collapses like what happened in March, right? If the real estate market collapses like it happened in 06 and 07, or if something happens to your health, you get this coronavirus and you're out of work, what happens to these 3 different types of accounts? Do they typically stay where they're at, or do they start to go down? Robin says, man, they start to go down. I said, well, let me ask you, what if there was a 4th piece of the puzzle that you could put into place that kind of acted like a hedge? And here's what I mean by a hedge. So you ever gone to a buffet or like a dinner place and like you've had like this perfect meal that you've had in mind, but on the menu, they're like, man, it's served with some nasty asparagus, and I'm really trying to introduce my fat kid in me, and I want some loaded potatoes on that sucker. And they're like, well, hey, listen, if you want the loaded potatoes, it doesn't necessarily come with the dish. We're going to have to talk to the chef. And then you're like, man, I'm worried about the chef, kind of doing something to my food. I don't know if I'm into that lifestyle. Well, watch. This 4th option is like picking the best of all the other worlds and putting them into one, right? Because if you look at this, if the stock market collapses, if the real estate market collapses, or if you go through a health issue and you're out of your job and you need some cash, the one place that you can put your money and never have to worry is actually what's called Alert. And see, most people, when I say this, they start looking at us and they're like, I'm not sure if you burped, I'm not sure if you had soda that came out of you, like what in the world is Alert, right? I say, well, listen, it's a life insurance policy, but it's designed as a retirement plan. And guess what everybody asks me? They say, well, this is interesting. Can you tell me a little bit more? I'm not really sure I understand. I said, oh, absolutely, no worries. So watch this. Here's why I say maybe you should look into Alert. And I'll say, let's say, Wante, you were putting some money away, okay? And what I'm going to do here is I'm not going to be biased at all. I'm just going to give you option 1, and I'm going to give you option 2. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some characteristics where over the 10,000 or 20,000 people that we've helped kind of find some stuff that's good for them, I'm going to tell you what they think is at the forefront of importance to them, okay? Wante, I just want you to agree with me or disagree. So here's the thing, Wante, when we talk to most of these guys and girls, the biggest key that they say is, hey, look, I want to have access to my money, right? Because if you realize this, I don't know if anybody's done the research or the math. I'm probably guessing I'm the biggest nerd in here, but from March 21st until today, we've had over 35% of retirement savers in America that are under the ages of 45 pull money from their retirement accounts, okay? So check this out. Here's why I always think access is important. Many of us, when I was first approached about getting started into real estate, my main issue was what? I didn't have access to money in order to be able to get started. Well, let me tell you. In option 1, Wante, unfortunately, you don't really have any access to this thing until age 59 and a half. Okay? In option 2, Wante, you can pretty much have access at any age. So if you knew, hey, look, in option 1, you had to wait until you were 59 and a half, or in option 2, you could have it at any age, which one you pick it? Wante says, no problem, I'm picking option 2. Okay, so that's one check mark for option 2. Say, Wante, here's the second thing. A lot of times, if people are still working or they come across the opportunity of a lifetime, we have to start talking about what does the income look like. Because if, let's say you're making $40,000 a year, you don't want to add another $40,000 to your income statement and then have Uncle Sam kind of take most of what you brought out away, do you? Wante says, absolutely not. Say, Wante, the unfortunate side, in option 1, this money is taxable. Meaning the moment that you get your hands on it, and actually even before you get your hands on it, guess who else is grabbing it? That's right, Uncle Sam. Right? Say, Wante, in option 2, you can have money that's tax-free. So, let me ask you, if you were to pull this money, and you're at any age, do you want the IRS taking a big chunk of it, or would you rather not have the IRS take any of it? Wante says, no-brainer. Give me option 2. Okay, that's 2-0. Wante, here's the third part. I say, look, a lot of people right now, they're worried. They say, why? Well, because in March, we saw that the S&P dropped 41% in 4 days. That's a lot of money to lose really fast. I say, okay, so look, if there was a spot where in option 1 you had high risk but a high rate of return, potentially, right? Or in option 2, if you had no risk and potentially a high rate of return, Wante, which one would you pick? Wante says, bro, that's a no-brainer. I'm choosing option 2. And here's what I'd like to share with Wante. I say, look, just based on these 3 characteristics right here, right now, do you want to know why most Americans fall into a big trap when something dire does happen? I say, if we take a look at this, 99% of people, this is where they have their current retirement funds. They have it in their IRA, their 401k, their 403b, their TSP, their 457, their 401a. Every single type of traditional retirement account that everybody in America has always been taught to save money in gives you all the characteristics of option 1. I said, well, listen, do you know what option 2 really kind of simulates? He's like, well, I have an idea. It's alert. One of the best options out there if you're looking for access to income and obviously risk aversion. So a lot of times we say, well, let's talk about why this is a big deal and why you need one, right? And here's where I'll get nerdy on you just for a second, and I promise it won't be too nerdy. I say, listen, if we took a look at the marginal tax rates inside of America today, okay? This is the amount of money that our government takes out of your paychecks. I say, look, historically, right now, we're at all-time lows. And I'm not a big, I'm not a guru. I'm not an economist, right? Economics was one of the classes that I honestly fell asleep in every single time I went to it, right? But let me ask you, if we are at all-time lows today, pretty much, would you guys agree that maybe it would go even lower, or would you think that it would eventually have to go higher? It's going to go higher. So, again, let's talk about what does your money look like at retirement? Because, again, we have to start thinking about this. So I say, okay, Wante, well, let's go through this, okay? See, in life, we have taxable money, and we have tax-free money. And if we know that right now tax rates are at their all-time low, and eventually they could go higher, I want you to think about this. Wante, I want you to imagine it's 10 or 20 years from now, and the tax rates have doubled. So if you're used to paying 12%, now you're paying 24%. If you're used to paying 35%, now you're paying 70%. Wante, let's talk about what side of the bracket your money comes